So welcome to our next episode of Focus 24/7. I am really pleased to be joined by Mr. Adam Dean. So Adam's been in our network for a long time. He's one of our Workday Financial subject matter experts, and the episode is called Launch into Workday Financials. So Adam, tell us a bit more about your Workday background, first of all.
Hey, Joel. So I've been in the Workday ecosystem for around 5 years now, worked on multiple implementations, not just launch, but larger scale implementations. So have a fairly diverse skill set and background.
Excellent. And for viewers, a little bit about me. So I've been in staffing for 20 years now. I've been at Focus Cloud for coming up to 2 years. I run a global Workday recruitment team, and this is a key area for us. So launch methodology and Workday Financials really kind of moving forward at the moment. So really looking forward to this episode. So let's kick off with your advice, Adam, around what to do before you've started your implementation. So either before signing or after you've signed, what should you do?
I think one of the key aspects with launch projects are the aggressive timelines. You're implementing an ERP system within a 6 to 7 month period. That period begins when you sign the SOW. So for me, the key piece is understanding the timelines that you will be working towards. First thing, timelines. Second thing that I would say is within your SOW, it will list the works that will be carried out. So generally there would have been an analysis of your business and there'll be a list of requirements, but the key piece here is that understanding each section. One of the things that I've always found with any implementation is people always underestimate the number of integrations that are required.
Okay.
That is a major key piece. I don't think anyone has listed all of the true integrations that they need. You need to think about the skill set of the individuals that you have on site. One of the things, inclusion and collaboration between the partner and the business is one thing, but what you need to take into account is if you're utilizing your HR business partners or you're utilizing your accountants in order to move forward with an implementation, you need to be aware of the skill sets of each of the individuals. Have they worked on an ERP implementation previously? Have they not? Do you need to make your accountants SMEs? Do you need to hire externally and backfill your accountants? Inclusion, I think, is the key piece that people need to think about. Utilizing the staff you've got is one thing, but also enhancing their skills with external skills, I think, is a key piece here, given the fact that most people generally don't have time to close out a month end in 5 days. I think it's one of the key things that people need to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the bits of advice we would always give is, really look closely at who you've got and make sure you've got somebody who's been through this before. It's a massive advantage, because Workday is a very specific product. So you need that level of expertise, and the earlier you can bring it on board, the better, really. So, good point, Adam. So rolling into implementation, then let's talk through the sort of key parts of the implementation and what you need to look out for.
Again, not to beat the integrations drum too loudly. That is a key piece that I would be focusing on, making sure the engagement between the different business areas, the collaboration between finance, HR, IT, that it's there. What I found in other places is they're very fragmented in the sense that they're siloed on their tasks.
Okay.
Whereas what you are purchasing is a fully integrated system. So not only IT, HR, and finance, but with the launch project, you're then going to have absence, possibly payroll. It's a system that is going to touch every single person within your organization.
Yeah.
And acceptance and adoption from the wider business is going to be based on the experience that they receive. If they're not able to book holidays, if they're not able to look at their pay slips, for argument's sake, there's lots of different things that you need to think about, not just the putting the system in, but also the experience and the acceptance from the wider business.
Yeah. Okay. No, good point. And then let's sort of talk through the key key part. So early part of the implementation, what are the key steps that you need to take? And also it'd be great to sort of pick your brains on what do you really need to consider? What are the sort of key success factors to make sure that you're off to a solid start?
I think some of the key points are understanding your chart of accounts. Most organizations have a fairly large expanded chart of accounts. One of the huge benefits of Workday is that you can utilize the work tags within the system. So instead of having 100 bank accounts in the system, you'll have one GL bank account and utilize the bank work tag. Therefore, from a reporting perspective, once you've collapsed your chart of accounts, you need to make sure that you collapse it to a point that you're comfortable with. Some that I've seen over the years are fairly aggressive, which in turn have caused issues for reporting later on down the line, which sort of flows quite nicely into the next piece that I would say you need to think about in the long term is the decisions you make now will affect how your reporting is. So you almost need to start from your reports and work backwards to see what level of granularity you require in order to be able to perform the tasks that you're currently performing better, more efficient way.
Okay. No, interesting. Okay, so once you've done that, you've kind of set up your chart of accounts. You know where you are. You've made that decision around GL and work tags. What are you going to do next?
I think the key piece once you're happy with that point is testing. Testing is always one of those ones where if you've not done an ERP implementation before, although the partner or the SI will deliver you standard testing scripts, which are great from a learning perspective, but one thing that I've always noticed is it's the happy path, the path that will give you the answer that you're expecting. Sure. One of the things that I would always encourage people to do is actually look at the negative testing things. Yeah. Even in the early stages, this may prolong testing a little bit, but I think in the short term, it will be much more beneficial in the long run, because if you can identify something in the first round of testing, it gives you a greater opportunity to correct that before you get to the go live point. As I said, with a 6-month turnaround to implement so many different modules, testing is a very key piece to this. And part of that testing should always include the security setup that you have. Smaller organizations, what you'll find is one person will wear many hats. Therefore, you may set up a business process, which is your approval steps, but you need to understand about whether or not you're going to exclude initiators. And if you exclude an individual from being able to approve a second or third step in the business process, how that's going to affect the overall speed of things being approved and signed off. So that in itself, the security piece is a fairly big piece that I would say needs to be focused on.
Okay, excellent. I mean, yeah, just running back to the testing piece, we see it a lot, the importance of having, again, the right level of testing resource, whether you lean on your functional resource or whether you get someone specific who is a tester or a test lead to oversee that. It comes up time and time again. So moving forward, then obviously, obviously testing, got through testing. What next?
I think one of the things you need to think about is upskilling your staff as well. So during the implementation, you want to utilize the people who will be the end users at the end of the day. So you want your accountants doing the testing. You want them to be familiar with what steps they need to follow. But also during that time, one of the things that I think is fantastic about the system is when you actually purchase or when you sign the contract and the SOW for Workday, is that they give you training credits.
Yes.
For me, I think this is a key feature. You've already paid for this service to be able to upskill your staff. And what I find is a lot of people don't always utilize all of the credits that they've got.
Sure.
So that would be a big thing that I would say, utilize them. They're there. If you don't use them, they're just going to be gone. During that implementation, along with the testing and things like that, you need to identify those individuals who you feel are going to require training and become the SMEs of your organization. So from HR to finance to like the tech team, there are so many courses available that will allow you to improve the skill set of your team, which as they go through the implementation will allow them to upskill themselves and therefore hopefully reduce the requirements later on or for external resources. For me, it's key about making sure that the people you have in your organization are on board, that it's a good experience, that they're not just being given a system and say, here you go, this is live, and give people the steps that they need to follow. Because Workday is an ever-evolving system, and you need to be up to date with the different things that are coming on and things that are deprecated. So one of the things you will find from an IT perspective is integrations change. And what will happen is sometimes they're deprecated, but at some point they will stop working. So you need people who have that skill set and that understanding in order to be able to troubleshoot, see that, be alert, and be on board with what's happening in the ecosystem and what's happening with their own tenant.
Yeah. No, really good point. Interesting, because obviously we come at it from the staffing point of view. We always suggest that when you bring in an external SME, that you get that individual or that team to really do a big amount of knowledge transfer for your internal team, so that you can leverage off their experience as well as the training. So yeah, great point. So let's talk about cutover. Sorry, unless you've got anything to add on that point.
No, I was just going to say that the knowledge transfer piece for me is key. Whether it's an external contractor or whether it's the partner or the SI that you're utilizing, I would always encourage people to ask questions. Don't just accept what you're told. If you're unsure of something, ask the question why. Yeah. It's better to ask the question now rather than later on when there's no one to ask that question of. Yes. So don't be afraid, ask questions and feel confident. That for me, the key to a successful implementation is the collaboration between all parties, whether that's internal, external, and the partner, and understanding. You have to understand when you're going live, the people that you're utilizing in the project. Is it summer? Are people going on holiday? Is it the end of the year? Is it Christmas? Within the 6-month period, you need to understand who's going to be where at what times as well. I think that's a big thing. If you have half your finance team doing month end, a couple of people working as SMEs, you're going to lose time. You're going to lose traction, and it's really understanding where you are, who's going to be utilized, and making sure you maintain that traction, because you have such a short period of time from start to finish, and it's a key. Planning is a key piece to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we mentioned earlier cutover. Let's talk a bit about that. What are the key considerations at that stage?
Cutover, I have to say the key piece is the data that you're putting into the system, understanding what level or what granular level of data you are going to put into the system. Generally, what I've seen is lots of customers like to have around 3 years worth of data. Normally what they would have is 2 years, which are high level, just done at the account. So not broken down to individual spend categories or revenue categories or work tags, etc. Then the next piece is that at what point you do go down to that granular level, making sure that it's reconciled. I think a key piece here is making sure that you have a decent mapping table in order to be able to transition from one system to another. If I take data from my previous system, run it through my mapping table, does it come out to what I'm expecting to see in Workday? And can I also reverse engineer that to get back to where I was?
Sure.
So depending at the time when your year-end accounts go to, etc., how much data at what granular level you are going to need, and then making sure that the testing piece around that and the reconciliation is done to the point where there is not going to be any surprises further down the line, and making judgment calls on things and putting them into maybe a suspense account, because you have to remember an implementation is not correcting the past. It's about looking to the future.
Sure.
The past can be resolved within the system. In a 6-month period, you're not going to correct errors from the past, unfortunately. That is something that post go live, you then need to think about. It will be something that you need to understand that if there is a problem there, now may not be the time to deal with it, but at some point in the future, you will have to address that.
Sure. Okay, interesting. Well, that sort of bounces us into going live and then afterwards. So let's talk about going live first. It's always a key point in the project or program, an exciting time, but also a daunting time. So talk us through that process, Adam.
If I'm completely honest with you, the first implementation that I did, I was expecting things to be really exciting. You know, you come into the office, it's like, yeah, we're going live today. And it feels somewhat like an anticlimax. And the reason being is because when you go live up on the first of a month. So what you've done, your accounting data is not in the system as of yet. You know, you still need to close out the month end in your previous system in order to be able to move forward. So it does feel a little bit of an anticlimax on day one. Like from a HR perspective, it can be a completely different story. You know, people are logging in, booking their holidays and things like that. But I guess post go live, what you need to remember is there's almost a blackout period where you've already created all your data sets, you've supplied them to the partner or to the SI who are going to load that information into the system. But what you will normally have is that window, that blackout window, where you need to compile that data in order to be able to get that into the system. So day one, your integrations kick off and everything's now starting to flow into the system. You're producing invoices, you might be making ad hoc bank payments, etc., etc. But the past data still needs to be put into the system, which again, it's managing that, understanding that the people that you're utilizing have a day job as well. You know, it's taking into account the different people who will be using the system on day one. Generally, it will be HR and the wider business. Finance are generally a month after, unless, and then you have like AP who might be making payments and so on and so forth. So it is a bit of an anticlimax, as I said, but from a finance perspective, I'd say the key point is the first month end after.
Okay.
Because you obviously have a number of tasks where you still need to get a month's worth of data in. You need to make sure that the reconciliations and stuff are in place, because people may extract data from one point and have built a reconciliation, but then they get to their first month end and they go, oh, my reconciliation isn't exactly the same as what it was previously. As we discussed earlier, we've collapsed our chart of accounts. We've now got all these work tags, and it gets to that point and people go, how do I can't see this data, I can't see that data. So being ready for that piece, I think, is key. So making sure that you understand the reconciliation so that you have the correct reports at the correct level, in order to be able to, if not a bare minimum, perform the tasks that you currently do, but to enrich them and enhance them. Okay. So I think that's the key piece is, and I guess it goes back to the beginning as well, is understanding what reporting you have, what it looks like, what you would possibly want it to get like. So there's many pieces that you need to understand, and it's the reporting which really affects the finance team. Okay. Because the goal always is to get the close down to 4 or 5 days. So without decent reporting or decent reports from the system, then that can be very difficult for people to perform just their basic tasks, so that's a key piece.
Okay, great stuff. And then optimization, a much talked about term. Let's go through it in some detail. So how do you really kind of leverage off the Workday Financials platform, optimize it, and start to kind of extract the maximum return on your investment?
I think one of the key pieces is, firstly, to stop, think about where you are, get to know the system, get to use the system first. What I see happen is, as people's understanding of the system progresses and they become more aware of what the system is capable of, they go live and then they want to make changes. For me, I would always advise, before you get to the point of optimizing anything, is steady the ship. Yeah. Make sure your team are comfortable with how the system's working. Once you've gone through your first or second month end, what you will find is people within different business areas will say, "Oh, we like this, but we'd like to break. We need more spend categories for our revenue. We need more expense categories because it doesn't make sense because we're grouping things together." So optimization, I think, will come with the knowledge, because you'll have a better understanding of what the system's capable of and what you actually want. And the people who are using the system on a day-to-day basis have a greater understanding. They're more confident in terms of what they want. At the end of the day, if you haven't done an ERP implementation or used Workday previously, how are you meant to know how to optimize the system? Yeah. Along with the optimization piece, I think one of the key things is the Workday releases. Workday does large updates twice a year, although there are smaller releases that you probably generally wouldn't know. So it's understanding what's coming, what's going to be removed. In terms of optimization for a new module, I would make sure that you have the people who have the skill set to work on those modules, who have the ability to implement them, and can upskill your staff that are there. If they don't have the skills to assist with the optimization, then you want people who are going to work collaboratively with those to knowledge share. So use of that module, but it has value, rather than putting a module in that doesn't, you don't have the people with the understanding to change it or update it and things like that. So there's a fine line between what you want and how you get there. Yeah. And making sure that you have the right skill sets there. I know there's a tendency, people look at costs. It's you've spent a considerable amount of money on a new ERP. You've upskilled your staff by utilizing the training credits, etc., that Workday give to you. Utilize the community, which we can come back to, because I think that's another fantastic thing that needs to be highlighted, that comes with Workday as a product. But you need to make sure that you know what you want, where you want to get to. Some people can be very reactive, as opposed to take the time, plan it. You've made a considerable investment, and you want that investment to pay dividends, and you want it to flourish. You want your staff to be comfortable with it. You want them to be happy. The ultimate goal is to reduce the time it takes to close your books, understand where your cash positions are. And once you get to that point, then start looking Do we want more modules? Do we want to set up projects? Do we want to create new entities? There's so many things. A lot of the time, people don't know where the exact parts of what they want, and then move into something where they feel they're optimizing it, but they haven't necessarily let the dust settle in order to be able to see the true landscape.
Sure.
So
very good point. Very interesting. So let's talk about resources, because it's a key piece. We touched on it at the beginning. It'd be interesting to get your view on, you know, and whether this is more than one individual, or whether somebody covers multiple roles. The sort of key parts. So let's go through kind of when you're implementing the key sort of resources you need, and then post live what it could look like. I know you've just touched upon the fact that you might need modular experts if you're going to deploy new functionality. To your view, Adam, what are the key areas that you need to cover?
I think with a launch project, because it's so aggressive, you need someone who has a good knowledge of multiple modules, because you generally won't have the budget to go, we need 2 people for HR, we need 2 people for each module within finance, etc. You need to make sure that in the short term, you have people who can wear many hats.
Yeah.
If you look at your permanent staff, you will always find that there is an individual who wears multiple hats within an organization. It's a given. And when you're looking at hiring an external resource, you should always be looking at that. Can this person wear many hats? You know, are they going to add value to the project? Do you need someone for each module? I would say no, but you need someone who has done launch projects previously, so they know the pitfalls, so they can say to you when you get to that point, we're looking at suppliers. Bank accounts are generally an issue. Routing rules are an issue. Or reporting is going to be an issue. You know, you need extra columns added to a report. It's one of those ones. Although Workday delivers over 3,700 standard reports within the system, what you will find is that it's not a one-stop shop for everything. There's always extra requirements. So you either have an external reporting specialist, or if we go back to the training credits, you identify someone within your organization who can go and do a report writing course.
Yeah.
But that's great. They may do a report writing course, but that doesn't make them an expert. So utilizing the skill set of someone who's been in the ecosystem for a period of time, who has a proven background in that as a specific skill, is fantastic. That will help you move forward. But you can't just have one person for reporting, one person for data, one person to look after customers, suppliers. You know, you would have a huge implementation team. And I think the bigger the implementation team within a small organization, it can cause delays. You know, it's a very fast moving, quick pace implementation. And you need to understand that you're getting the core pieces. Once they're settled down, then you may think about specializing, like people with specialist skills. So one specific module, you know, you may want after you've gone live, the reporting piece, you may say, oh, we need someone who's going to be able to do our statutory accounts, and they're going to build that in a report. So I would say you need to look at more specialized, a specialized skill set. But through the implementation, a generalized skill set is going to have greater value than someone who's only ever really worked on one module or 2 modules.
Sure.
And the crossing over of skill sets as well. You have Workday HCM and you have Workday Financials. With the launch project, yes, they work together, but what you will find is you'll have people who have a HCM skill set and come from a HCM background, or you'll have people who have worked with and on financials implementations, but not necessarily HCM. So if you can get someone who has a crossover with that skill set, fantastic. They can almost sit at a higher level, but when there's an issue, they can get into the detail and identify where there are problems, or they can identify problems before they occur.
Sure.
And I think you'll find that in the early part of the testing. And again, because you have someone who has a general knowledge, they can troubleshoot far quicker than someone who specializes in one business area.
Yeah. Okay. No, really good point. And then sort of walking through kind of building up the platform, adding functionality, growing the internal team. So key consideration is kind of how much do you rely on external support, for example, and how much do you build up your internal knowledge base? So it'd be great to get your opinion on that one.
I think this is the key topic for a lot of organizations, especially when they're relatively small, and your finance team's quite lean, your HR team's quite lean. Who owns the system? Is it finance? Is it HR? Is it IT?
Yeah.
And there's been many discussions on ownership and who owns what parts. What I would say is identifying key individuals that will own the system. You definitely post go live need someone who is going to own the system, who is going to be the system administrator. And for me, that's a key piece, because you need to identify an individual who is going to take ownership, who can lead those questions, who's going to be the conduit between all of the different business areas, and then your SLT. Someone needs to be having those conversations. You can't have several SMEs all sitting around in a room wasting their time because they don't want to listen to the HCM piece, or they don't want to listen to the IT piece. So that, I think, is a key feature that people need to understand, because with a launch project, 6 weeks post go live, the partner or SI will be there. So they'll get you through your first month end. You have another couple of weeks so you can clear up any issues or concerns that you have in that time frame. But then after that, you do need an SME who's going to be able to take ownership and help with the development of the system.
Yeah.
And any changes that may be made. I think that's quite a key piece that lots of people forget, because you have your SMEs there, but once that SME leaves, that knowledge also leaves. So having an owner makes it, and not just one owner, a team of people, whether that is the owner and a person from each business area. But you need to make sure that you collaborate within your own team. So finance needs to have people who understand the system, not just one individual. Same with HR, same with IT.
Yeah.
It's otherwise it can be a very, very expensive lesson to learn.
Sure. Okay. And that nicely segues into the next piece. So I was going to talk to you about lessons learned. You mentioned earlier some of the sort of key potential pitfalls if you're don't have the right sort of foresight and haven't been through it before. Let's talk about kind of key lessons learned, maybe some examples or some advice around, if you were advising an organization going through this, what must they do to gear themselves up for success?
Key thing would be understanding your chart of accounts and your data conversion. Data conversion, I think, is a key piece. If you don't get that right, moving forward, that's going to affect your testing. You won't be able to reconcile back, or what you will do is you will be getting people who are stuck. The testing will take longer. You'll go over your go live date. Then there's a cost incurred.
Sure.
The data conversion also then affects your reporting again. So it's back to front and front to back. You need to think both ways. You can't just think start, end. You need to look at where you are, where you want to be, and how you go from where you are, the as is, and to how you're going to get to the to be.
Sure.
So that sort of covers what I would consider the more functional piece, but then on the flip side, you need to think about how is your data getting there? How efficient is the way that you've done it? Are you posting data from a third party system? How's that working? Again, that comes with the testing piece. What I've found in a lot of places, the integration testing, because it takes time to get them built, gets pushed off.
Sure.
That then causes an issue because you've signed off a testing phase, but yet you haven't really signed off on your integration testing because you're not in that position to be able to do that.
Okay.
Then that's going to flow on to your security. Again, if your integrations aren't all set up correctly, how do you know that your security is set up correctly? So there's everything is interlinked, and I guess that's where you need to think of the collaborative approach rather than the system is meant to be a one-stop shop. It's your HR system, it's your finance system. It's something that will be utilized by every employee from top to bottom, and you need to make sure that you've covered all of the bases for the basic functionality that you've purchased.
Sure. Okay. Fantastic. Good. Any other key points from your side, Adam?
I think really it's looking at controls as well. So if there are wants that you've had, then you need to look at them, the control aspects that's going to come into play, making sure that your employee experience is good, and make sure you utilize the tools that are given to you. Workday Community is fantastic in the sense that your employees can go on, they can ask questions to the hundreds of thousands of employees that are actually in the Workday ecosystem. That as a tool is priceless in itself. Not to mention the fact that if you're really stuck, you can actually post a question to Workday directly. They will review your tenant for you. If there are problems that you have and you're just like, this makes no sense, you've been on Community, you can post a comment to Workday and they will look into it for you. I think these are the little things that people don't necessarily know straight away, but I think they're just fantastic pieces that come with it. So utilize them. They're there. Yes, you could have a partner or an SI in place in the short term, but when you start thinking about that longer term ownership and you become sort of independent with the system, you need to know what's available to you in order to be able to move forward if you hit a problem. Again, external resources will always be helpful. And I'd encourage people to make sure that they get the right type of resource. I think just because someone has used Workday or they worked somewhere where they've done an implementation, it doesn't necessarily give them the functional knowledge to understand how the system is working, what you need to do in order to be able to develop the system and get the most from it. So make sure that you understand the skill set of that individual and what your ask is of the person that you're bringing into your organization.
Sure. Okay, excellent. Last point then. So change. So pace of change, type of change. We talked a bit about getting internal SMEs involved early so that they can start to adopt the system. So give us your view on that and the change management piece, because it's often something we see that can be overlooked. What's your view, Adam?
I think with utilizing people within an organization is great. It has to happen. But generally, these people have not been through this experience before. So it's a very big ask. So you need people with the skill set, the aggressive timelines. You need people who have been there, seen it, and can adapt to it. Weekends, you'll find yourself working weekends. Generally, most permanent employees, we all have families and things like that, but some people don't want to do that. There is a big sacrifice in terms of time from individuals, whether that's a permanent employee or a contractor.
Sure.
You generally end up working more hours than you should, but that's to achieve the goal. The goal is to make sure that the product is delivered to a decent standard and it's usable.
Yeah.
And it's a big ask to take someone who has been an accountant all their life to then go, we want you to understand the functionality of a new ERP system. So you need to understand how the EIBs work, how the integrations work. We want you to be able to change reports and update reports. And we want you to look at creating new calculated fields, creating new accounts, creating new spend categories, creating new account posting roles. There's so many different pieces, and you only gain that knowledge with experience, and 6 months is never going to be enough time to get someone to learn the system inside out from all of the different business areas. So it's the external resource will always be required, and I think people need to be aware that the key is the right type of resource, not necessarily the number. You can have lots of people on an implementation, but without the right skill set, you may as well not have the people there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's a strong message. Good. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much, Adam. It's been great to pick your brains on launch into Workday Financials. Some excellent points that I'm sure our viewers will really enjoy. So, yeah, it's been a real pleasure to have your time and expertise. And we'll be posting this out to the community and also some clips on this as well. So thanks again, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Joel.
Cheers, Adam.